everything is really quite silly, and why indifference is the path to wisdom. So, on this planet, there are 8 billion humans approximately. Young humans, 30-year-old humans, 60-year-old humans. And so, a long time ago, we decided to make gasoline passenger cars in relation to oil as the thing we're going to burn to power devices. There's stored energy in the bonds of fossil fuels. When you break that with igniting it, it releases energy. Energy can make things spinning things. And so I've had a 2024 Model 3 Tesla for over a year now, and I've loved the experience. And by the way, it's extremely affordable. For a Model 3 with autopilot, in the lease paradigm, it's only $5,000 due at signing, and then $500 a month. And the lease paradigm is actually economically efficient because the monthly payments are about half of what you'd pay if you're going in the loan paradigm, and then you're committed to the car for a shorter time. Loan up to ownership would be 5 to 6 years, whereas the lease is only 3 years, in which even if you do eventually own the car after 5 years with a loan, it will depreciate by above 10% each one of those years. And so anyway, I go around in a non-emitting electric Tesla, and the FSD computer, which is right above the glove box, cooperates with about 6 external cameras that are looking in all directions at all times, rendering pedestrians and gasoline passenger cars around me as gray. And so, further, I use this thing called GreenFi. Now, they were originally called Aspiration. They're a clean banking platform that doesn't invest in oil. FDIC insures the user's money, and then has a mechanism called Plant Your Change that funds the planting of trees in Kenya and Haiti for a few American cents per tree. And so each individual that's using the platform contributes some amount of trees without noticeably affecting their life at all. And so at the time of my recording this, I might be at about 732 planted trees. When those are fully sized, you do the mathematics, you get that, okay, that will offset the emissions of 73 gasoline passenger cars for a year. And there you go. And so some people who are critical of this would be like, okay, well, of course there's still emissions with the mining of lithium, but ultimately Tesla's factories have a net zero architecture with solar on the roof, and the whole concept as well of nearby wind turbines, such that the factories can operate on energy produced by themselves, either the solar on the roof or the wind turbines nearby. And so, because the cars are non-emitting and the factories are net zero, the fact that there may be emissions involved with the mining of lithium for the batteries mathematically is still better than having a bunch of gasoline passenger cars. And so the whole idea is that going into the future, fossil fuel eventually will run out. And so then you say, what are you going to do if we're still alive? It's good that we're starting the electric passenger car thing from now. And so the planet Earth just is a rock, and there's a finite amount of burnable fossil fuels on it. So, anyway. Yeah. And so a human brain is a biological neural network. It has axon and dendrite pairs, and it's firing action potentials. And And so we have two eyes, and those eyes, well, they may be dilated if you're looking at someone you love. And by the way, because everything is very silly, love isn't even a real thing. It's just evolutionary selection, infatuation, oxytocin secretion, and delusion, which is why the divorce rate is quite high. I'm sure any person who's involved in the world will have seen that a good amount of people they know are just divorced because it's a delusion. Anyway, and so let's say you're a human driver, you're a biological neural net with eyes. What vector space are you acting on? This is going to be quite abstract, but it involves linear algebra. And so the set of basis vectors of the vector space you're acting on are acceleration, braking, and turning left and right based on visual information. And your biological neural net computes what you're supposed to do for the given situation automatically. Now, of course, when you're getting an American license, you need a certain number of driving hours. Driving hours, practice behind the wheel. You need to pass an assessment. And so those driving hours are effectively your neural net getting fitted to typical driving scenarios. Now, the whole idea is then, if you have a silicon neural network that's sufficiently trained, it can be safer than humans. And so ultimately, the fact that Tesla FSD is enabled to be driven on virtually all roads in the US is because it's at the point where the data is showing that indeed the collision probability is lower with Tesla FSD than with humans. Because you have 6 cameras looking in all directions at all times, rendering everything, and a computer that's ultimately making decisions in a better, safer way than human brains. And so I've had the car for over a year, and I really think it's the best, cheapest camera-based autonomy system on the planet. And so, they recently released the robotaxi, and so the whole idea is like, okay, people are like, okay, well, Waymo's ahead in the robotaxi game. They are not understanding the end game. And so Waymo's robotaxi system uses a comparably quite expensive LiDAR and radar system. And so although it works, with the release of Tesla's robotaxi achieves equivalent performance with much cheaper hardware, and the Tesla factories can churn out the robotaxis way faster than Waymo can churn out Waymos. And so in the end game, Tesla will win the robotaxi market as well, and you can safely say that I predict that as Deus Ex Machina. But anyway, so yeah, but really everything is quite silly, and this is why indifference is the pathway to wisdom. And so if you think about what evolution is doing, you just have variance and selection. And so, a long time ago, a guy called Jesus Christ in the year 0 died for our sins. And so, he was a lunatic. He thought he was God. But his philosophical ideas held a whole lot of weight. He saw the world as broken. He saw himself as a savior. And he was blasphemous. Now, Jesus wasn't God. Jesus was a human. But Jesus was a very special human. He was arrogant enough to say he was God and think that his philosophy was superior. And that got him killed. So, the Romans crucified him. Which is why everything is really quite silly. And so anyway, in the Bible, you'll understand that there's things such as love thy neighbor as thyself. For any civilization to work, you need to have respect for your neighbor. And so, it's just like, hey, if you're living in a shared living situation, you're doing up division of labor. different people taking out the garbage on a rotating schedule. Love thy neighbor as yourself. Adhere to the schedule. Now, it was my day today, and I had planned to do it after I got back from playing soccer, but it ended up being, after 8 p.m. and one of my friends did it for me. And I was like, well, okay, I was, just gonna do it later, but, love thy neighbor as yourself. Hey, thanks for taking out the garbage for me. Anyway. Then there's thou shalt not bear false witness. False witness is fancy speak for lying. And so in any civilization, you need to have shared, propagation of true things. But what is true subjectively for each consciousness is different, and we need to understand that. Anyway, so when I was still a naive person, between the junior and senior year of my undergrad college, I fell for a scam. It was a scam that was very brilliantly designed by something quite smart, or some people that were quite smart. And so just like the movie Ex Machina, they utilized a fake image of a sexy female, a multimodal model that could quickly provide edited screenshots I took of the app interface, such that it could provide a red arrow with the next action I could take in the application. And then a fraudulent copy of OKX. And so ultimately, let's combine sexuality, a multimodal model, and a fraudulent copy of OKX to deceive naive people into sending cryptocurrency to the scammer's cryptocurrency wallet. And so my naive brain between junior and senior year of college, who had studied a lot of computer science and physics and math, but ultimately thought that the world was good and such level of deception and evil could not possibly exist, and was then stripped of its naivety, I realized how evil the world could be. Because everything is really quite silly, and indifference is the way to wisdom. But anyway, I've made a whole lot more money than what I lost at that point in the scam. And here am I saying I've had a Tesla for over a year and so on. Now I'm going to a prestigious grad school, Northwestern University, Master of Science in Electrical Engineering. Right? So anyway. I might have touched on this in the selection video, but another reason why everything is really quite silly is the porn industry. So I'm sure any of you white girls who watch porn know of the legendary Mandingo. What does the description of some of his videos say his size is? 13 inches. Well, Mandingo is really a 5'7" black man, and the only metric that's accepted for penis size is called BPEL, or bone pressed erect length. And Mr. Mandingo, if you do a BPEL on him, his result would actually be somewhere between 9 and 9.5 from his pelvic bone to the end of the head of his erect dick. But with camera angles and girls shorter than even him because he's 5'7", that description is saying he's 13 inches. Right? And I'm sure Any of you white girls who watch porn, you may know of Julio Gomez. His name, or pseudonym Break. Yeah, the internet says he's 6 foot. I'm not sure if that's accurate because the internet also says he's 14 inches on some of his videos. Now, if you actually look at the frames of these videos, again, the BPL on him from his pelvic bone to the end of the head of his dick is 10 inches and really at best maybe 11 inches. But they're adding 3 inches or 4 inches to that BPEL and utilizing skinny girls, short girls, and camera angles to say he's 14. He's not 14 at all. BPEL, which is the only way to measure dicks. And so, what am I? I'm this guy who's a 6'4" brown man who genetically is made up of African heritage, European Irish heritage, and then European Spanish heritage. And so there's this thing where black males are endowed but not as good looking as the white males who are pretty but smaller. And so I see myself as a brown man who got the facial attractiveness of a whiter man, but the endowedness of a blacker man in a sort of evolutionary hybrid of Caucasian and African races as a light skin or a brown fellow. And so I'm a 6'4" fellow, but if you see me walking around flaccid, from the pelvic bone to the head of my dick, I might be only 5 to 6 inches. But if you get me excited, BPEL, I might be 9 to 10 inches. And so as I said before, the Mandingo may be 9 to 9.5 BPEL, but the videos exaggerate him to 13 in the description, right? And so when I'm at 10-inch BPEL, I actually have half an inch on Mandingo, who is 5'7", whereas I am 6'4", which is why everything is really, really quite silly. And so, indifference is the way to wisdom. Anyway, and so at 24 years old, I had intercourse with a 35-year-old woman on 3 occasions. The first time, even though she was 35 and experienced, I was too thick to even fit inside her, requiring her to utilize lube to even take me at all. And after we were done, I said, "How many times did you reach orgasm?" She said, "I don't know, about 4 times." And so yes, she had 4 orgasms in one session with me and my half an inch bigger than Mandingo dick, which is not 13.5 inches, but about 10 inches BPEL, because they add 3.5 inches to Mandingo's true BPEL and say he's 13 when he's maximally maybe 9.5, measured properly in a way that could go into the statistics book. The statistics book. What does the statistics book tell us? It tells us that everything's just normalized. It's a normal distribution. Why? Evolution produces variance. Variance. And so, variance. And so IQs have variance, heights have variance, athletic coordination have variance, musical ability has variance, dick size has variance, female breast size has variance. Everything is, there's a certain normal metric, then there are the outliers on the right end and the outliers on the left end. I was talking to this 37-year-old stripper, and she said one of her sexual experiences, she was with a guy, and they're about to have sex, and he took off his clothes, and she looked and saw that he had a micropenis. And this was a very sexy stripper, and so I said, it must have been a very confident man for a man with a micropenis to get that sexy stripper to the point where she was about to have sex with him. And so, anyway, and so some amount of male consciousnesses literally have to deal with having micropenises. Isn't that messed up? Which is why everything is just really quite silly, and indifference is the way to wisdom. Anyway, so So, anyway, um, yeah. Anyway, um, so if you go to a pub and you see, or a strip club, you see a bunch of gambling machines. What led to the creation of those gambling machines? A lot of very intricate electrical engineering, a lot of very intricate computer science. All the electrical components have to work perfectly, and the algorithm must mathematically guarantee that no matter what, that gambling machine will give out less money than it takes in from the gamblers. And so the low IQ people go gamble on the gambling machine. The algorithm ensures that the gambling machine profits off the gamblers. Sometimes the gamblers win. But I've never seen at a pub the fellow who understands computer science and who is a programmer playing one of those gambling machines, because they know that it's mathematically rigged to profit off the gamblers. Mathematically, with whatever programming language is used to write the algorithm that guarantees this. Now, much of intelligence is used in an evil fashion to profit off other people that are dumber, like that scammer that got in touch with me, and like those gambling machines, and like everything else. Now, if you're a fan of Lionel Messi, because he's a god of the game of soccer, and I'm saying soccer because I'm in the US, but obviously the short that got popular of me doing soccer skills that is hovering at around 3,400 views, I used the word football, which is the international word. Now, I'm originally from Jamaica, and they called it football there, but in America they call it soccer. Now, soccer is getting big in America. They hosted the Club World Cup, which hosted a lot of European teams in the US, and the World Cup itself is going to be here in America, with the final being played in Miami in 2026. So, anyway. But everything is really quite silly, and indifference is the way to wisdom. So, anyway. And so why in the heavens are athletes so rich? You look up the profile of Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer is quite a young guy who plays for Chelsea. Look at it. Look at his salary. It'll say about 6.76 million. Right? He doesn't have an undergrad degree in anything. He decided from early that he was just going to go full time with the soccer direction. Right? Then he was the man of the match in the Club World Cup final against PSG, where he got 2 goals and an assist, right? And so why in the heavens are athletes so rich? Is it because they're more useful or very smart? And the answer is the following: ad revenue and consciousness. And so football is the world's most popular sport, or soccer in the US. And so the amount of people that watch live broadcasts of important matches is nuts. And so if you look at a jersey of any top club, it has the logos of the sponsoring companies associated with that club. And the stadium will have logos around it, and so on. And so all these companies pay big bucks to have their logos displayed associated with certain clubs and stadiums. And the players that club signs are paid big bucks because so much consciousness watches soccer or football that ultimately the athletes are hyper useful to the sponsoring companies. And so if you say, oh, hey, Cole Palmer, you don't have an undergrad degree. Can you do a 200K job requiring a master's in computer science and a deep understanding of algorithms and data structures and C++? Cole Palmer, you're like, I think you're bonkers, mate, but I'm making 6.76 mil, and so 200K is what 30 times less than what I make. So I don't need to know all them C++ kind of algorithm data structures, because I'm just this athlete, and I'm scoring, and I'm in form, and the company sponsor me and earning 6 million instead of 200K. So which is why everything is just really quite silly, and indifference is the way to wisdom. Anyway, so anyway, if you're a fan of Lionel Messi, um, a long time ago he did a Pepsi ad. Now, if you ask Messi's nutritionist where on his dietary plan as an athlete was Pepsi, that nutritionist would say, well, it's non-existent. Pepsi is carbonated water, food coloring, and sugar. And so a professional athlete really doesn't have much Pepsi. And so Messi, however, with how much consciousness knows him as one of the greatest of all time, does an ad with Pepsi where he's like holding his Pepsi bottle, and then boom, gets like a ton of money from Pepsi. Does he drink much Pepsi as a professional athlete? No. And so anyway, my uncle used to be addicted to Pepsi. Because guess what? The evil cabal that paid Messi so much money for that Pepsi ad is profiting off making an addicting, unhealthy drink that ultimately just is like hacks into your brain with an optimized formula that is addicting and sweet. And so all the people are drinking the Pepsi. And if you look at American diabetes statistics, they're horrible. They're horrible. And it's because of the evil cabal. Consciousness, ad revenue, sports, sponsorship, unhealthy addicting foods. All this the evil cabal regulates to get rich at the expense of human intelligence and human health. So anyway, and so in my idealism, I'd consider a world where people just are paid for doing useful things that help make civilization nice. And so the ridiculous weighting of attention and so on to athletics and so on, when the athletes ultimately are not builders, engineers, software engineers, people who are actually building the important things that civilization needs. They just function as a means of entertainment. And with their popularity, if they're one of the best in the world, they get paid a whole lot. Are they more useful than a physicist or a computer scientist or an electrical engineer who's like actually a maker who's making products that civilization needs? If a professional soccer player drives a Tesla, is that professional soccer player in any way more useful than a Tesla employee who may only be making 100K, whereas that soccer athlete's making 6 million? No, and so if they drive that car, that's because someone way smarter than them at Tesla maybe 100K engineer or 200K engineer made the product, but they're earning way more money because a whole lot of consciousness watches them play sports. So. Which is why everything is just really quite silly. And indifference is the way to wisdom. Anyway. Yeah. So anyway, most people who think much of themselves would say, would you accept a job in Kenya or Haiti as a tree planter associated with GreenFi? They say, no, that job's under me. But there are certain people in Kenya and Haiti at the point on the diversity scale where they say, wow, being a tree planter, actually is an opportunity that enhances my quality of life. And so I got an email from them, and I see a smiling African lady who's like older as well. And so there are people who are at a point of adversity where, hey, they're affiliated with GreenFi. They're tree planters. They're in Kenya or Haiti. They are poorer. The opportunity to plant trees for GreenFi, right, improves their lives, right? And then some other arrogant person will be like, oh, that job's under me. Which is why everything is just really quite silly, and indifference is the way to enlightenment. So. Now, of course, on this channel, other than the soccer short, there's videos of me doing all sorts of things, because for whatever reason, I'm this person who can do almost everything under the sun. Martial arts, piano, Clair de Lune, Debussy, musical composition, soccer, singing like Sinatra, dancing like Jackson. The moonwalk I did in the video Sledgehammer was quite smooth and comparable to Jackson himself, if you haven't seen that one. And so I don't particularly know what I'm meant to do. I think the whole notion that anyone's meant to do anything is hard to prove. And so from a very early age, right, when Mozart is extremely musically brilliant and composing from an extremely early age, you could say that Mozart was meant to be a composer. When Messi is dribbling past 4 players, and he's like a 6-year-old, right, in Argentina, you would say that Messi was meant to be one of the best players of all time. But most people who are normal and are not particularly great at anything are arguably not really meant to do anything. And so at one point I went to a restaurant, it might have been a McDonald's, and there was this older fellow, and he was, just a server at McDonald's with a McDonald's cap. Is that what he's meant to do? A whole lot of people aren't necessarily doing something they feel they were meant to do, but just some job that pays the bills. And that's just how it is. So. which is why everything is just really quite silly, and indifference is the way to wisdom. So. Now, there's also a short on this channel, I believe, of me doing, somewhat advanced yo-yo tricks with a professional yo-yo, the type of yo-yo that's designed to have a wide gap for string catches and a bearing in the middle to make it sleep for a quite long time. A Caribou Lodge Yo-Yo Works Avalanche that costed $120 at the time I bought it is what's featured in that video. Now, I do a few moderately intricate string tricks with that thing, but I'm not some yo-yo champion who uses one of those in both hands and does combinatory string tricks with two of them. And so that guy exists as well. And why the hell is that guy able to do what he does? Because for some reason a whole lot of consciousness wants to watch intricate yo-yo string tricks. It's like, hey, there's like a world champion or champion of a yo-yo contest, and then he's popular and he gets attention because for some reason people want to see intricate yo-yo string tricks because it's hard to do and visually appealing for entertainment. I don't know. Is that guy as useful as a $200K software engineer? Not necessarily. I don't know what practical value to civilization yo-yo performance does other than entertainment. So. Which is why everything is just really quite silly, and indifference is the way to wisdom. Yes. And so, what in the heavens type of path am I on? Well, my undergrad bachelor's was a mathematics major and a computer science physics double minor, and then in all that I got a 3.7 out of 4, and then became a published McNair in multidisciplinary design optimization, which is a field where you utilize mathematical models and simulation to converge on the optimal design vector for some engineered vehicle. Could be a car, could be a rocket. Do that in simulation. And so there are going to be performance constraints, like what is the altitude at apogee that you want, and then design constraints, like we can't make an engine that's more powerful than 10 kilonewtons because that's outside of the scope of what our team can do with the money we have. And so you converge on the optimal design vector given constraints, and then that convergence and simulation enables the engineering team to build the idealized product or vehicle. And And then when I was a freshman undergrad, I was working in two high-profile labs at the same time. One with a, a sort of uh, uh, a fabrication technique which is called two-photon direct laser right lithography, in which you have a photoresist and then a femtosecond laser, and those photons are hardening the photoresist to print structures with micron precision. And so yeah. And so a micron is 10 to the negative 6 meters. And so anyway, and so that lab had that fabrication technique. And then the other lab was trying to make trapped ion quantum computers, which is where you magnetically confine an ion, then you use lasers to drive transitions on the quantum bit, which is special because it can be 1, 0, or superposition. And so, for example, let's say a metastable state of the electron in terms of the energy levels is a superposition state of the quantum bit, which is all Greek to people who don't understand physics and quantum mechanics and energy levels of atoms. But physically, you can make a quantum computer by magnetically confining ions and shooting lasers at it to drive transitions in the energy level of the electrons. But anyway, and so I was this freshman undergrad, and for some reason I had the idea to say we should 3D print the ion traps, use the fabrication technique of one lab to print the ion traps for the quantum computing lab. And the PIs took it seriously, and so it took about 2 years, but they printed the traps and they wrote a paper about it. And long story short, although more senior researchers were the lead on the project, my name ended up getting put in the acknowledgements of the resulting paper. And so if you're interested in ArcZiv, it's geometries and fabrication methods for 3D printing ion traps. And in the acknowledgements, my name is mentioned. Aaron Casselet is the one who suggested it in the first place. Now, in any system or business, you have the idea guy. And the idea guy may not anywhere near be the smartest person on the team. And so grad students in physics and so on were the ones that actually did it. And then for some reason, I was just the kid crazy enough to be working in both labs at the same time and somehow see that connection and possibility, right? But I was a dumb freshman compared to the other guys. So anyway, and so the McNair thing was actually a paper that was my own authorship. I had the idea for the quantum collaboration, but I didn't write a single word of that paper. So anyway. Yeah. And so for any consciousness that doesn't know what the hell a quantum computer is, the whole idea is that the property of one superposition, where the bits can be both 1 and 0, and store more information, basically information is stored in the superposition state, and then then you also have entanglement, where the quantum bits can be entangled and communicate instantaneously irrespective of distance. And so you have, in computer science, you have logic gates, but then in quantum computer science, you could call it, you have quantum gates, like C naught, which is controlled naught, and a whole slew of other things, which is a way in which combining like superposition and entanglement of the quantum bits, you have different logical gate operations. And so anyway, you're like, okay, what the heck is a quantum computer? How could that be useful? It already is useful, and so a company called D-Wave has successfully made a quantum computer that can solve optimization problems in a faster and better way than classical counterparts. And so it could be like a bus route optimization problem. It could be, how am I going to thin the vegetation in this area to optimize safety of the spread of wildfires? Those kind of optimization problems quantum computers can handle, not to mention flight optimization, flight trafficking optimization problems. All these things, quantum computers will be faster and better than classical, and they already are, like D-Wave's computer and so on, for certain types of problems. So, anyway, so yeah, and so unfortunately, I didn't decide to not go to college and become a full-time soccer star and make millions of dollars. I'm on a track to get a master's in electrical engineering from Northwestern and make 100K, maybe at best 200K, with that degree. And it's like, well, the thing about civilization is that the intellectual path of getting a master's in computer science or electrical engineering or computer engineering is quite demanding, right? But then you're doing that, you're functioning as a nerd. You might make 100K, you might make 200K, then an athlete makes 6 million, 15 million, 30 million, right? Right? And that to me is why everything is just quite silly. And indifference is the pathway to wisdom. And so in a world without the engineers and the nerds, the athletes couldn't drive the cars or have cell phones that they can post on social media with. And there you go. Which is why everything is just really quite silly, and indifference is the way to wisdom. So anyway, yeah. So, well, I think I may be out of ideas for the moment. This has been why everything is really quite silly, and indifference is the way to wisdom.